Okay, this is part 2. So, Peter and Olivia, they go to the scene of the auto accident and stuff, and the guy's like, oh, you're on the phone. And she just started screaming that she saw a monster. And then she crashed, obviously, and she has white hair now, just like Greg when he died of acute exhaustion. So then, back at the lab, Walter's like examining Greg's head, and he finds a microchip thing inside, and he calls Peter, and he says it was embedded in his midbrain, and the part of the brain that regulates sleep, which is called the thalamus, or thalamus? I'm not sure. Sorry about that, but you know what I mean. And so Peter examines the other woman's body, and he sees the stitches in the same place, so they both have microchips. And then goes to Master Dynamic, and Nina shows Broyles this biochip that has a wireless transmitter, and like brains can connect to computers and stuff, and monitor sleep cycles and all that, which helps them with sleep, apparently. So then she says they've been tracking this sleep researcher named Dr. Nyack. So Olivia and Peter go to Dr. Nyack's house and stuff, and they tell him about the 2 people who just died, and he's like, oh, they're both patients of mine. He's all concerned. So there were 82 people who had that biochip embedded inside them. It was part of this like big trial experiment thing. So he takes them to their office, but then they find out it's destroyed, and like all the stuff is all messed up, and all the patient files are gone. So he says that they're backed up on a remote service and server, and he gives Olivia the password. So then she also asks him like if there was anyone who would want to sabotage him and like destroy his office or steal his files, and he says only for like money, but that doesn't really count that much. And then she asks him for a business card for her records, and then Peter's talking to Walter on the phone. He's like, oh, maybe I can regulate mind control, and he's like, no student volunteers. But then Walter agrees because he's really eyeing the FBI agent to try the mind control thingy. And then it goes to the hotel, and like Peter's there, and Olivia like sees a picture of her and Charlie, sob, and Peter's like, you know, that thing you killed, it wasn't Charlie. She's like, I know, but it's hard to accept that he's gone, and she's all like kind of like crying. It's really sad because I miss Charlie. He's awesome. But anyway, back to the story. So then she leaves to go to the clinic and help the nurse identify patients that have the chip. So then it goes to this woman, and she like her head feels weird. She's like a cook in a kitchen and stuff. And then it goes to this like really dark room. You can't see anyone's faces. Like one person has this like big weird device on his head, and then this other dude's there, and he's like, do you want to increase the dose or whatever? And he's like, are you sure? And all this stuff. And then like the cook, like she starts to feel like really weird, and then she looks around, and like all the other chefs are like cooking body parts, like hands and stuff, and it's really gross. And then she's like, oh, and she's all freaked out. And so then it keeps switching back with like the dudes in the weird dark room, and then her, and then she gets a knife, and then she walks over to someone who's grilling body parts, like all the other people in the lab. And then in the Boston lab, the FBI agent, he's like, oh, I'm going back to Seattle. But then Walter's like, oh, wait a second, I need you to smell this really quick to, I don't know, identify something. It was all really a scam. And then he smells it, and he's like, raspberry? And then he just passes out because Walter's going to use him to test the mind control thing. And, okay, I'm going to go to part 3 now. So